Hi everyone, welcome back to Box of Lights. Welcome to this presentation of Cosmic Frog. This is the latest release from Jim Felly and Devious Weasel Games. Plays 2 to 6. I've been working on some solo rules, but we're not going to go too much into that right now because I'm still in the final stages of development. Maybe some tweaking going on. But what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to play the game against a solo AI, and when I'm playing I'm going to be using all the regular rules. There's nothing different from the regular game, so we can learn to play against an AI driven opponent. Cosmic Frog has you taking on the role of these giant frogs. And when I say giant, these are frogs that travel a universe which is laid out here on this neoprene mat, consuming worlds and disgorging them into a vault. These worlds are different types of tiles. There's 8 different types of tiles. So we've got some hills, we've got some meadows, there's swamps and deserts as well. We're going to be consuming these worlds, disgorging the lands onto this vault, and we're going to be trying to create patterns. There's highlands and lowlands, and you can see there's different tile thicknesses. So this is a mesa. We've also got lakes, forests and mountains as well. And you're trying to create rows of lands. So for example, 3 lowlands here in a straight line would give you 6 points. If this were 3 highlands, 9 points. Okay. Highlands and lowlands, like I say, is purely tile thickness. And these are a good thickness, these tiles. So on our turns, we're going to be taking actions to leap across this landscape, consuming lands, placing them in our gullets on our player boards. We're going to be using this currency of the game called oomph to boost our actions, expending it, recovering it, and then disgorging the lands that we collect into our vaults. Okay, right, that's the basic outline of the game, but there's lots of clever little mechanisms in here that keeps the game flowing and makes it really interesting. So let's start with some setup. There's a short game, a medium game and a long game. I've set up the short game here and it's not visible to you, but there's 2 end conditions in the game. This layout of tiles here is called the shard. Surrounding them, this space, is the ether. So together the playboard is 2 areas, the shard and the ether. These tiles are called barrens. Okay, there's no land here, there's no meadows, there's no lakes. If the shard should at any point in the game be completely barren, all the lands have gone, we're going to seed this in a moment with land, then the game ends. And also, as the game progresses, some of the tiles in the shard will be disappearing. And as they disappear, you flip them over. Some are blank, some have these what are called fractures. In a long game there's fewer fractures, in a short game there's many fractures. But as fractures get revealed, as the shard breaks up, they get placed in this shard integrity track. And as soon as there's 6 here, the game immediately ends. The number of land tiles in the game depends on how many frogs are playing. We're going to be playing 1 green frog against a team of 3 robo-frogs. In a regular game you need at least 3 frogs in the game. So if you're playing a 3-player game you could have each of 3 players playing 1 frog against each other. In a 2-player game you would play a team of 1 versus 2 or 2 versus 2. Depends how you want to play it, right? But I would recommend 2 versus 2 in a 2-player game. We're going to be playing 1 against 3. In a 4-frog game we're going to have 8 of each type of lowland and 6 of each type of highland. Just shuffle up the lowlands and start placing them around the shard. And then we'll place the highlands on the lowlands of the matching domain. So there's 4 domains. There's water, so lakes and swamps that go together. There's terra, which is the yellow ones. These are deserts and mesas go together. There's plants, meadows and forests go together. And stone, hills and mountains go together. So just place these around. What that means is there's going to be 2 lowlands without any highlands. That's okay. There's no right or wrong way to do this, really. So once you've set up your shard, give each player a player board of their colour. So we've got one green and a vault. Now if you're playing as a team, you'll have a shared vault. So on the back of every vault is a shared vault. So I'm playing one green with a green vault versus 3 frogs, a team of blue, yellow and red with a shared vault. Incidentally, if you look on the back of the player boards, you might find a little picture puzzle. Put all 6 together. There's grey and purple as well. These frogs are super. There's 3 moulds, 2 of each. And what you'll notice is that with these 2 moulds, to assist the colourblind folk, there's a little icon on the bottom of each. So this is a moon, for example. So those are your 6 different frogs. They've got snap-on bases, so you can have teams however you wish. Right, they start on the player boards. Each frog gets 6 oomph. Oomph, I say, is the currency. We'll look at that as we start looking at actions. Shuffle up this splinter location deck. Separate these 2 action cards. There's one called Ether Flux and one called Splinter Strike, and they create a discard pile. For the action deck, for each colour frog in the game, you're going to have a set of action cards. In a 4-frog game, each frog gets 5 action cards. We'll give them a shuffle to create an action deck. This is a real clever part of the game. We also have a stack of tarot-sized ability cards which show off this wonderful artwork of these cosmic frogs, these giant frogs. It's beautiful. Sometimes a game is just wonderful to look at, and it's one of these games. Give them a shuffle. Give each player 2. They're going to choose one and discard one. For the Robo Frogs, we're just going to give them a face down card each. Robo Frogs aren't taking any oomph. Choose one of the abilities. If you're not sure the first time you play, just give them one and see what happens. I'm taking Void Shadow because that's just super. Okay, players place their abilities face down. We're going to keep them hidden. Cosmic Frog is kind of like an abstract strategy game. It's all about position, moving your pieces. But there's one thing which changes the game up, and that's your ability card. It gives you different stats. We'll look at these icons in a bit. But an ability and ways to spend your oomph. If you see this ohm character, this is oomph. Alright. So in a multiplayer game, it's kind of interesting to be able to hide your ability until you're ready to reveal it and catch your opponents by surprise. Right, we're set up, ready to go. Let's start seeding the board with our 3 Robo Frogs. Like I say, let's not focus too much on the solo rules, but I'm just going to, because they're in development, but each frog's just going to take a splinter location from this deck to decide where they start on the shard. So, yeah. We'll shuffle those back in. What's going to happen is, every time we go through this action deck, if we see one of these Splinter Strike cards, it's going to reveal one of these splintered cards, and that's going to cause a part of the shard to break up and splinter apart. And that's when the shard integrity is compromised and potentially we head towards the end of the game. So you can see there's kind of this timer mechanism here. Right, we're not going to start seeing them until we get through this deck though. The Ether Flux, when this pops up, that's when frogs potentially change their abilities. They mutate into a different type of giant frog and new abilities come up. So you're not stuck with the same ability through the whole game. Each turn of the game you just draw the top card of the action deck. Whatever colour frog turns up is the frog that gets a turn. That's it. So we draw again. It could be another green, could be one of the others, blue, red, yellow. So green gets to go first. That's good, that's us. You get a reference card, so every player gets one of these. Gives you a reference of the different types of land. It also tells you actions available. There's different actions available depending on whether your frog is on the shard or in the ether. Now as it goes, everybody's frog starts on their player board. So the first thing you do when you begin the game is you descend onto the shard. We can pick any barren tile next to the ether to descend onto. So I'm looking for a kind of decent spot. I'm going to descend here. So it's on the shard, on a barren tile, next to the ether. Now we get to take the first action of the game. It's our turn. Green. We're on the shard, so the actions available to us is we can attack another frog, try and steal tiles from their player boards. We can recover our oomph. Remember, that's the currency that we spend to overpower some of our actions and use abilities from our ability card. We can harvest. That means we pick up land tiles from the shard. Slipstream and leap. Leap is how we hop around and move. Slipstream is a way that we move. We leap into the ether and kind of bounce off it and land on another tile anywhere on the shard adjacent to the ether. So I'm going to take a leap action. How far I can leap depends on how full my gullet is. My gullet's empty at the moment. I've not harvested any land, so I can leap up to 4 hexes. So I could, if I wished, leap 1, 2, 3, 4 all over here, and it's in a straight line from the 6 lines coming out from the hex that you're currently on. You can leap over the ether, so that would be 1, 2, 3, 4 if I wanted to leap up here. Okay. As it goes, I want to leap here. If I want to leap more than 4, I can spend oomph. Okay, remember, this is our game currency. I can spend this. For every one that I spend, I can leap an additional hex. That's it, that's my action. I didn't do very much. But on our turn, whenever we take an action, we always have the option to spend 2 oomph and take an additional action. So let's do that. Let's expend 2 oomph. So I've got 4 left. 4 is available. 2 spent, and take an additional action. With my additional action, what I'd like to do is harvest. If you're standing on some land, you can harvest the top tiles. If I was standing here, I could take these forests. I'm standing here, so I can take these swamps. Take that tile and place it in my gullet. I'm going to swap these around for you. This is my gullet, and it always goes in the bottom slot. So you fill your gullet from the bottom up. This is important when we disgorge into our vault, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. That's it, we've taken our second action. We can't spend more and take a third or a fourth action. Okay, it's only ever 1 action for free, 2 actions if you spend 2 oomph. Now I do have a special ability. At any point you can turn your ability card face up. Right? There's no reason for me playing solo not to turn it face up, because I've got no one to surprise. So I'm going to turn it face up. So I could, if I wish, destroy the terrain tile I'm standing on. Now, I might actually do that. Let me show you why. I'll spend an oomph, destroy the terrain tile we're standing on, and now we've plopped into the ether. Okay. The reason why I did that is because there's a chance yellow standing next to me could immediately attack me. I don't want him to do that. It's blank, so it doesn't affect the shard integrity. Alright, that's it, we're done. That's our action. Next action goes to red. Like I say, I've got some solo rules, and the Robo Frogs are going to be driven by some simple AI. Red's up here. He's going to try and leap to a spot with some land so we can harvest. We're going to just roll that die. It's a 6, so I'm having red leap up here. That's it. Job done. Nice and simple. Next, blue. Blue's going to do the same. Blue's leaping up here. Red again. Okay, red's going to harvest this land. So it's taken a meadow, place it in their gullets. Remember, bottom up. Blue again. Blue's going to do the same. Harvest this land. Yellow. Yellow's going to leap this way. Blue. Blue's going to try and gather. So at the moment these are just harvesting up lands. Yellow's going to harvest. So harvesting a highland. We need another green. Oh, it's still blue. Blue's going to harvest a mesa. Green. Okay, back to us, finally. Now we're here in the ether. We've got a couple of options now. Once we're in the ether, we've got land in our gullet. one of the actions we can take, let's have a look. We can attack a frog. We can raid another frog's vault, or a team of frogs' vault. We can recover oomph. We can land back on the shard, or we can disgorge. So I'm going to disgorge this land into my vault. Now where I put it is significant. Maybe at not this stage of the game, so we'll just pop it here. But when I start disgorging lands, I want to be able to create lines. Let me give you an example. Let's say I've got a couple of lands in here. Now you disgorge from the top down. So when I disgorge, although this was the first land I collected, then I collected this one and I collected this one, or harvested rather. When I disgorge from the top down. Okay, so I might do something like this, working towards a line of blue across here. And as I disgorge, I can actually start stacking, so I might decide to do this instead, or maybe I'll do this. And you can stack up to 3 tiles high, because maybe I'll get a line of 3 blue, and then maybe a line of 3 green on top of them. So although it looks like my vault is kind of limited in space, you can stack it in this 3rd dimension. So that's how your vault works. Now you'll notice I'm not being incredibly efficient with my actions. Disgorging just one land is not the best use of my actions. So anyway, I'm going to spend 2 more oomph and go again. And this time I'm going to choose the land action. You might say, well, why don't you recover your oomph? You can't recover your oomph as a second action, and you can't take a second action when you recover your oomph. But anyway, I'm going to land back on the shard. And when you land back on the shard, you can land on a baron, just like when you descended as your first turn of the game. Or you can land where there's land tiles, or you could even land where there's another frog. Don't want to attack another frog right now, but if you land where there's another frog, you're effectively attacking them. So this is a highly interactive game, and it is a game where you're attacking other frogs, stealing their land that they've already harvested, raiding their vaults where they've already disgorged. Let me just comment on that quickly. I collected land in my gullet. If I'm attacked, I can lose land from my gullet. The land that I disgorge into my vault is kind of safe. It's locked in this vault. If I'm attacked by another frog, they can't get this. But when I'm in the ether, I can get, if I'm attacked by another frog, I can get knocked back into what's called the outer dimensions. When I'm in these outer dimensions, my vault is unlocked, and then it's vulnerable, and it's vulnerable to people raiding. So this is another action when frogs are in the ether, raiding other people's vaults. So that's the only time. So you're in the ether, you get attacked as one action, attack is successful, knocks you back into the outer dimensions, your vault is now vulnerable. All right. But while I'm here on the shard, my vault is locked. Okay, so there's lots of dimensions to this game. Right, so I've landed, that was my second action. Right, next. Blue. Blue's got 2 land in their gullets, so they can move, they can leap 2 spaces, they've got 2 empty slots. They're going to leap into the ether. And the reason why they want to leap into the ether is because it's only from the ether they can disgorge their gullets into their vault. So that's what Blue's doing. Red. Red's going to try and harvest more land. Rolled a 2. So they're going to leap this way. And me, green again. I'm going to take the chance to recover some oomph. I'm hoping I won't need to do this for too much longer. Remember, I can't take a second action because I've just recovered oomph. Green again, perfect. Right, that helps. I'm going to harvest this land, and in fact I'm going to spend 2 oomph and harvest that again and take that one as well. So I'm taking the lake and then the swamp. So I had to spend 2 oomph to take the second action. The lake came in first, then the swamp. Okay, next. Yellow. Yellow's here, I'm going to harvest. Into their gullets. Yellow is going to leap into the ether. red. Red's going to harvest. Yellow is going to disgorge. So again, yellow's going to disgorge. And for robobots, they're just going to go up this way, down that way, and back up that way. Okay. Green. I'm going to leap into the ether, I think. I kind of did this a little bit wrong as it goes. So I might actually slipstream. So I've got 2 empty spots on my player board, so I can leap 2 spaces, but I'm going to leap into the ether. Then I'm going to play an oomph to slipstream. Slipstream means I bounce off the ether and I can land onto any space adjacent. And I'm going to land here. You can see I'm collecting blues at the minute. So that was my first action. Then I'm going to pay 2 oomph and harvest this lake. My gullet's getting quite full. And it's red's turn. And red's just going to leap into the ether. Alright, now the action deck's empty, and this is when we need to give it a little bit of a shuffle. So we shuffle it all up. Now the Splinter Strike and the Ether Flux are going to go in there, right? And also at this point I'm feeling a little bit vulnerable, because my gullet's nice and full. So I don't know who's going to go first. I'm hoping it's me. It's yellow. Yellow's in the ether, their gullet's empty, so they're not going to disgorge. Instead they're going to try and land. And when they land, there's a nice juicy frog here called me. I'm just going to see where they land. They're going to land here. Now, as it goes, they're actually landing on my space. But 2 frogs can't occupy the same space, so they choose a hex adjacent, because they're landing next to the ether, to attack me from. With yellows attacking, they're going to flip their card face up, and on their card they've got a number of icons. This top one says, if an attack is happening on the shard, which it is, both frogs are on the shard, use a yellow die. There might be a white icon here, or a red icon here. If we look at my ability card, mine is white. So the white die has numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A yellow die is like a regular d6. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So a yellow die is slightly better than a white die. Okay, but I have this Void Shadow ability. Attackers must turn their ability cards face down as part of their attack declaration. Now if you haven't got a card face up, by default you always use the weakest white die. So yellow's going to attack me with a white die. I'm going to use a white die, because we're on the shard, to defend myself. This one here is what happens if you're attacking each other from the ether, if you're both in the ether. This third one is used when raiding somebody else's vault, and we'll come to that in a bit. So this frog is attacking me with a white die. I'm defending myself with a white die. They've got to score higher than my roll to successfully attack me. If they're equal, the attack fails. If they roll lower than me, the attack fails. Now typically, with all good games, you can mitigate dice rolls like this, with a combat is resolved by a single dice, and you can in Cosmic Frog 2. For 2 oomph, I can overpower this die, and I can overpower it by saying, instead of rolling 1 die, I'll roll 2 die and take the highest result. And if I wish, I can boost that die. So I can overpower it, I can boost it, I can do both, I could do neither, I could do one or the other. Boosting it just adds 1. So it's my choice. I could say, let's spend 2 oomph and do a +1 here instead. Okay. Or I could do both. I could spend 4 oomph and I could roll 2 dice, take the higher, and then add 1. Alright, so there's 2 different ways of boosting your dice. As it goes, we're going to have just a plain old 1-on-1, because I've only got 1 oomph left. So we're going to have the yellow rolled a 1. I'm going to roll a 4. Okay, so we successfully defended this attack, and that's it. The attack just peters out. Yellow's going to go again and try and attack me again, so we'll do the same again. I continue to have my Void Shadow ability, so he's not going to get that boost. This time he rolls a 3, and I rolled a 1. Okay, so this time his attack has come through. Combat's interesting in this game. The attack is successful. No one ever gets defeated, no one gets killed, you just get hit backwards, alright? There's no hit points, there's nothing like that. All that happens is you get knocked backwards. Now the difference between the two dice, 1 and 3, is how many hexes you get knocked back. So 3 and 1, I get knocked back 2 hexes. As it goes, I'm going to get knocked back 1, 2, in a direct line from where the attacker, and this is where it's important, the attacker must fix a hex that he's attacking you from. So I'm going to get knocked back into the ether, and then yellow will come and claim the spot where he was attacking me. Now if I'd got, let's say we was attacking from this side and I got knocked back 2, then instead I'd get knocked back onto this barren tile. Yellow would come and take my tile, and because I got knocked back onto a barren tile, just like us in a Splinter Strike, we've not seen one yet, but what happens is if I get knocked back, I'm a gigantic space frog, right? I get knocked back, this barren tile would get removed and I fall through into the ether. If I get knocked back onto a tile where there's land, then this time I get knocked back, the land is destroyed and removed from the game, but I don't drop through. Okay, so it's only ever the top tile that gets destroyed. Right, so that's how combat plays out. This frog's going to go in here. Now yellow's got 2 options. As the attacker, as a successful attacker, they can either harvest the land tile where they've just landed. If there wasn't one here, then they obviously couldn't take that option. If they were attacking you from the ether, they would get a chance to raid your vault. Okay, so free harvest or a free raid if they're in the ether. Or if you've got stuff in your gullet, land in your gullet, they can take land from your gullet. Now remember, they beat us by 2. They knocked us back 2 tiles, so they will have to take 2 tiles from my gullets. They have to take them. They can't choose to take less, but they're going to go from the top down, just like this. All right. And that's horrendous for me. That's properly messed up my plans. Now, what would happen if their gullet was full? If I had less than 2, they would just take what I have. But if they had, say, their gullet was full up with land. Let's say they got this situation and they steal stuff. What's going to happen is that's going to go in the top like that, and that gets pushed off and removed from the game. And then that one, all right. And they can't avoid that. If they've stolen 2, then they take 2. All right, that's the way it works. Cool. All right, so that's a successful attack. If this were a successful attack in the ether, like I said, what they would do is they would push me back. They'd knock me back. But instead of knocking back on the shard, we're not on the shard, this 2 knockback would knock me back 2 spaces into the outer dimensions, and then they could raid my gullet, or they could raid my vault. As it goes, that's the net result of this attack. Green. Now I get to reap some revenge. Do I want to just disgorge this while I can? If yellow activates again, he's going to disgorge this into his vault. If I attack him back, I could potentially steal those lands right back. And this is just the way the action cards play out. So whether you get immediate revenge or not really depends on this deck. That's how clever this deck is. It can really change up the play. And it becomes an agonizing decision when you're making your choices. Do I do this? Do I do that? Well, it depends. You've got to think, what are the chances of my card coming up again versus yellow's card coming up again? You know, and chances are chances, not certainties. The other thing to point out is oftentimes your ability cards are going to be the things that help you out and dictate what you can and cannot do. So for example, now I combat in the ether, I get to roll a yellow die, so I've got a +1 advantage already. And these abilities will help you out. So this one I know stops opponents having to go at you. I'm better off in the shadow. Their attacks are weaker. If we just look at some examples. So Marauder says your extra action only costs you 1 umph instead of 2. You may overpower your raids. Empyrean, you may leap 2 hexes per empty gullet slot instead of just 1. Whip Tongue, you may harvest from adjacent hexes instead of just the one you're standing on. Mutagenic, regain 2 umph when an ether flux occurs. And it says regain 1 umph whenever a frog turns their ability card face up. So that's really going to help. Ravager means you can harvest barons and turn those into oomph. Right, so lots of different abilities that are going to change the way you play and the strategies that you employ. Maybe not strategies, it's a very tactical game, and because your abilities will be changing quite quickly. Your strategy is really going to be about how you're going to build your vault, which lands are you going for, because it's all about getting those points. So for example, let's say I want to raid their vault. Maybe I think that's a good thing to do. Let's say, I don't know, we'll go for red. Let's attack red as our action. Remember, it's our turn. We've got our action here. So red's ability, so they're good on the shard. They get a white die on the ether. They've got camouflage as an ability. My robobots don't use these abilities, they just ignore it. But just if you're playing multiplayer, it says frogs must pay 2 oomph to target you or to declare an attack against you. So you could reveal that and then stop, because I don't have enough oomph, you see. But anyway, because of my void shadow, that's face down. So in defense, he's going to roll a white, and I've got a yellow die in the ether. So my attack is to attack the red. So they rolled a 0, I scored a 2, so our attack is successful. We're going to knock them back 2 spaces into outer dimensions. Additionally, when you get knocked back to outer dimensions, you lose your ability card. So this just gets placed on the bottom of the ability stack. And then when you come back from outer dimensions, you'll gain a new ability. And we can steal 2, the difference in the dice, land tiles from their gullets. So we can grab this one, grab this one. But let's say we don't want those. Let's say we want to go for this forest in their vault. So we can, instead of emptying their gullet, we can, because they're now in outer dimensions, their vault is unlocked. A shared vault is unlocked when any one of the team is in outer dimensions. And now we can raid, and we raid using this final die here. Remember, if your card is face down, you always use a white die. So our raiding is not great, but some abilities would have better. This one's yellow, but a red die is even better. Okay, this runs 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so it's a +1 on a yellow. Now raiding, and this is really the final action that we've not talked about, you can decide how many tiles you want to raid, and you've got to declare a number of points. To raid a lowland tile is 1 point, to raid a highland tile is 2 points. So if there was 3 in here, and let's say I could say, right, I'm going to raid 2 points, and that's because I might have my eye on these 2, or maybe this 1, or I could say I want to raid 3 points, because I want to grab this and I want to grab this. Or you could even say I want to raid 4 points. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, these are 2 lowlands, 1 highland. Right, so you declare how many points you want to raid, and that's how much you want to push your luck, because you have to roll higher than that number of points on this die. Remember, this runs 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I wanted to raid for 2 points, I've got a 50-50 chance. Okay, 0, 1, 2, they're not higher. 3, 4, 5 it is. So let's say I decide I want to raid for 2 points. I roll the die. Excellent. 4 is higher than a 2. I get to steal this and place it in your gullets. However, there is a little penalty. For every frog in the team that's currently in the ether where you're trying to raid, they're kind of like guarding. There's a -1 penalty. So the blue frog here turns that 4 to a 3. It's still better than a 2, so we've still successfully raided. And then for every tile that you've raided, the frog moves from outer dimensions that number of spaces. So if 2 tiles were raided, you'd move 2. In team play, if there's multiple frogs here, you choose which frog would move. That's the end of my action. I don't have enough oomph to take a second action. Remember, it's always 2 oomph. Alright, Splinter Strike. That's the next card. So as soon as the Splinter Strike comes up, we flip the top card. Here it is. And it gives us a splinter location. Right, we're at the top here. So that yellow hex, which is this one, is going to be struck. Everything here, so even if it was stacked with land, is destroyed. Okay? It's a blank. So not a fragment for the shard integrity. And then every hex surrounding, which is yellow and everything's around, it's got the orange highlight, everything surrounding, you remove the top tile from. Okay? And any barons are then destroyed because they are the top tile. And look, the shard has now been split into 2, and we've revealed a fragment. So there you go. I'll show you what to do with this one in a minute. And the top tiles from these all go. They're disappearing from the game. And then this fragment is placed over here on this track. and say, well, as soon as we've got 6, that's a dead stop. And that's a splinter strike. Remember, the second condition is all lands disappear, everything's barren, and the game ends. In that case, it's not a dead stop. You have to wait until you get through the deck. Okay, and then the game ends. Right, yellow. Yellow's going to leap into the ether. Red is in outer dimensions. When you're in outer dimensions, you can't do anything. All you can do is roll the white die. It's a 5, and then return that many spaces. So if I roll a 0, if it's 0, it would stay where it was. In a regular game, what you do then is you take the card, the action card, and you place this next to your player area. And when you get what's called dimension 0, which you're returning from outer dimensions, all these, any cards that you collected, or however long it took you to escape, you get to play out those as actions. Right? So you kind of bank them. Even while you're here, you're banking your actions until you return, and then you can play them. You'll get multiple actions in a row. We're not going to do that for dummy though. So a roll of 5 means we get to descend from outer dimension 1 back to dimension 0. And at the end of your turn, you can either descend onto the into the ether or descend onto the shard. And it's not like landing; it's like descending at the beginning. So when you descend onto the shard, it's an ether adjacent barren tile, something like this. Okay. For our Robo Frog, he's going to descend back into the ether. And then finally, red draws a new ability card back in the ether. It's getting a little crowded here. We may be a target. I'm really hoping for a green card next. It's red. Alright, time for some revenge. So there we are. That's pretty much all the rules down. And hopefully that's given you a good impression of how the game plays. If you're interested in seeing more, I'm going to carry on playing. Join me in part 2 and we'll see how this game plays out. Like I say, the solo rules are a little bit of a work in progress. Once they're ready, I'll put a link in the description, and one of the things you'll see is how we score these vaults. Like I say, you're going to be scoring points for lines and also points for diversity, the land domains represented. Okay, so if you've got a water land and a plant land, say a forest and a swamp, that's 2 different domains, so that's 2 points, right? The other thing I've not shown you yet is siphons, and I'm trying to build one right now. But if you have a lowland, a highland, and a lowland in the same domain, remember your vault is 3 tiles high maximum. Then for every one of those you have at the start of your turn, you can recover 1 oomph. Like I say, you'll probably see that in part 2 as we continue playing